Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this, your Leo October 2022 reading and forecast. Hi, I'm Nigel Saint James, clairvoyant. For those of you who are stopping by for the first time, and to the subscribers, well, it's always great to see you. I love seeing you each month, truly I do. You're almost like my extended family. And you know that we don't have any video advertisements breaking into this content, and so you get to enjoy the experience. Now, speaking of experiences, I've had the great good fun and pleasure of meeting some of your Leo sisters and brothers in the course of the last month for personal one-on-one clairvoyant readings. And if you are interested or would like to have a one-on-one with me from anywhere in the world, just check out the information that's in the description box below. But now we're going to take 5 cards, and 5 is all we need from this rather interesting and very rare and unusual deck. Let's have a look and see what there is first up, shall we? And it is the 7 of Swords. This is the King of Discs. This is the 3 of Swords. This is the 8 of Discs. And where's something else that we might get? Where do you think we might get something from? Maybe here? What might this be? You look like you want to come out. Come out, whoever you are. There's the 7 of Cups, Debauch. Well, the titles don't really mean anything on this set of cards, incidentally, and that's a stupid idea, but I'll get that to you in just a second. But now, why don't you come down here, sit down here next to me. We'll have a good close look at the imagery on these cards together while I do your reading for you. Well, it seems to me that there is some periods of self-doubt here and maybe wallowing around in self-pity. Let's work through them, because there is a bright side and a learning to everything here. And in fact, what ends up happening is prosperity and success. But let's have a look at this 7 of Swords first. I'm going to go down this diagonal because I have a theme. And you are going to come out of it very well here. Now let's have a look at the painting at the first. Well, we have 6 geometric 7-pointed stars. You can see them around here, these little ones down there, and a central 7-pointed star. Now it refers to the 7 classical planets before Uranus, Neptune and Pluto were discovered. Now the 7-pointed star in Christianity is used to ward off evil. Did you know that? Now when called the elven or fairy star, it represents a gateway for the fae, or the fairies, whom everybody knows can be tricky. We see the moon itself in the background at the dark and sometimes blood-red stage of the totality of a lunar eclipse. In a blood moon eclipse, people sometimes experience negative effects. At the physical level, there can be tiredness, and at the psychological level, negative thoughts, especially around spiritual motifs. The moon's action of flux and reflux leads to instability, and people are more prone to make poor decisions as the intellect can be compromised. Now also in the foreground, as you can see there is a camel. Your heavily laden camel has gone to its knees and given up on making it to the oasis. You are out of water, yet on the horizon, dark, towering storm clouds threaten rain. Are you going to give up now? It may be tempting to give up, because if you just fold your hand, you can claim you didn't really lose. But that's not what you are going to do. Now, developers put titles on cards which are stupid, and futility is a stupid title for this card, because this is actually the Lord of unstable effort, of things moving up and down. It is the moon ruling the third decan of Aquarius. Now, the emotions of the moon cloud the intellectual qualities of Aquarius. Aquarius is thus weakened, giving it a lack of clarity. And so you might find that you have a despondency, negative expectations, or feel discouraged about something. You could even be feeling ineffectual. Or what you might be doing is just coasting. You're just doing enough, working beneath your own standards. Now, as I say, I do feel that there could be lots of self-doubt at the moment, making it seem that difficulties are insurmountable at times. Now, your mind is probably distracted, you see, and so you just need to be focused, because the doubts that dominate are, I think, subconscious. That is as a result of the moon here. Your fears actually have nothing to do with reality, so wake up and see what is really happening. In what areas of your life do you diminish yourself with your own limited ideas? What are your constricting belief systems? And how will your life look when you drop your doubts? Do you know, there is a book in the Old Testament, or the Hebrew Bible, the book of Psalms, Psalm 38, verse 32, which says, "Do not abandon me, O Lord, my God, be not far from me." And then in verse 23 it says, "Hasten to my aid, O Lord, and be my deliverance." Well, meditating on that, your impulses towards self-pity are swept away. It will replace your thinking with understanding that you are the creator of your own circumstances, and what you have created, you can change. Well, what's the next taxi off the rank? Let's look at the Three of Swords here. Now, Saturn and Libra, okay. Let's have a look and see what's going on there. Well, quite clearly, this is a representation of the instrument that was at the Greek city of Delphi and used by the Oracle of Delphi. The Oracle of Delphi used to breathe in the vapors that came from the dark chasm of the earth and come about with predictions, and as an oracle would prophesy the future. Here is the Ouroboros, this python-like snake eating its own tail, a symbol of eternity. Here, Saturn, well, that's replicated by this picture here, and in the background there are dark rain clouds. Now, sorrow is what? Sorrow is actually something that enables joy. But let me first look at this astrology of Saturn and Libra first. This is Saturn in the second decan of Libra, the 3rd to the 12th of October. Look, do you know Saturn is actually exalted in Libra? So you might expect really good things from Saturn. But because there is a number 3 here, I have a mystical association with the planet of Saturn as well. And so there is a double dose of Saturn in the card. And Saturn is about limits, restrictions, time, form, and formality. And the suit of swords in the mind can from time to time be especially difficult. So what we're talking about here, perhaps, are worries, doubts, and again, lack of clarity, a heaviness about you, possibly a tension in a 3-sided relationship. Do you know, Saturn is a strict teacher, making all impurities visible, and it blocks all comfortable avenues of escape. The lesson to be learned here is no less than the mastery of care and worry. A brooding, distrustful outlook must be recognized clearly as negative energy, which separates you from your origins, which are with the divine. This energy can also relate to a tension-loaded, three-sided relationship, and the energy is attempting in some way to explode or destroy it. This situation usually demands clear decisions, and any attempt to avoid making them will cause sorrow and worry. Now, I do have to say, it's also possible that there could be some sorrow that you think about from memories of past hurts, losses, or separation, but the past is dead. It's no point. You cannot resurrect the past. It's a feeling of melancholy, perhaps. Look, I'd recommend read a poem by the English poem John Keats, that's Keats, called Ode to Melancholy, and see that in melancholy there is, in fact, a great joy. But this card is a summons, I think, to make clear, unmistakable decisions. Only in this way can the lost balance of Libra be regained. Now, what difficult decisions are there for you to make or face? Say this to yourself, though, because it is true that every problem contains its own solution. Well, running down that diagonal, we now come to the Seven of Cups. Let's have a look at it. Let's deal with these front on, shall we? Let's look at the imagery first. Well, there are 7 cups, which are green, which is the colour of fertility, birth, creation. And from the cups go little embryonic creatures inside here. Do you see them? They float off into the sky. Now we have Venus in Mars. Now I also have a mystical association with the planet of Venus here as well. And so we have a double dose of Venus. I'll talk more about that in a second. Now here, these are, I think, there is a mirage in the background here, and the mirage is in a very arid and drawn out, dry environment here. It's a mirage of water, and in the background here, we don't have new towers. We have the decaying remnants of forgotten dynasties. I think these things here are will-o'-the-wisps, which are light things that seem to go towards you when you retreat from them and go away from you when you go towards them. Inexplicably, it seems. And there is this night sky. But look at this cracked ground here. And what does this mean? Now, the card is actually titled, again, probably not very wisely, I think, Debauch. Now, it's Venus ruling the third decan of Scorpio, which is the 13th to the 22nd of November. Now, there is a double Venus here, as I mentioned, because of the numerology of the 7. Now, Venus, of course, is the planet of love, and Scorpio is about intensity, in-depth transformation, and about exploration of the self and others. But because there's a double Venus coming into the picture here, into Scorpio, Venus doesn't have any handbrake applied. So she goes in unchecked. The other thing is that Venus is in detriment in Scorpio, and so Venus is unable to express its sensitivity and its emotions properly. Instead, they can get channeled into negative addictions and intensity, which is the darker side of Scorpio. It implies that you might indulge in excess reactive behavior due to something that has affected you deeply. And I'm looking at this card here, but which throws up, and which has changed you, I think, but which might throw up its own set of problems, such as too much drinking, ill-informed choices, drugs, eating too much. Does that ring a bell? Drinking and eating? You could find yourself being very annoyed by people after at this time. Have you ever tried to cover over old wounds, but the diversionary tactic hasn't helped? After every binge, after every attempt at flight, the leering face of your old problem rises all too clearly before your eyes and colours your experience of the situation gloomier and gloomier. You know, the secret title to this card is that of illusory success. The energy here represents the working of Venus in the sphere of the mind, where her influence is by no means clear-sightedness. You believe what you want to believe when you are under the influence of Venus. So it's time to open your eyes and take a look at a perhaps painful reality. Only by perceiving, by recognizing your own inner reality will you be freed. Every further attempt to avoid it increases the stagnation of your emotional energy. Is there some disappointment that you have not yet worked out? Have you experienced something that was maybe just a little bit too good? Have you overtaxed yourself or overdone things in any way? And how can you change your present situation? But understand this and say it to yourself: as I accept my shadows, they lose their power over me. Now, I think it's probably appropriate for me to look at these three cards in a row and just say something finally about the three of them together. And it's about joy and sorrow. Because this is talking about a lot to do with sorrow, but you overcome them, that's the thing. And why? Because your joy is your sorrow unmasked. And the same well from which your laughter rises was very often filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Isn't the glass that holds your wine the very glass that was seared by the glazier's flame? And isn't the guitar that soothes your spirit the very wood that was hollowed with knives? Now, when you are joyful, look deep into your heart, and you shall find that it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. And when you are sorrowful, look again into your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Do you know, joy and sorrow, they are inseparable. They come together. When sorrow sits alone with you at your kitchen table, remember that joy is in the other room, asleep on the couch, ready to come in. Good. Well, shall we have a look at the 8 of discs? Anything jumping out? I think this image is quite straightforward, and you can get from it what you will. Of course, it's about fertility, growth, and new things coming. It's about things growing and building, just as things grow inside an egg. What's more important, from my perspective at the present time, is that this is the sun in the first decan of Virgo. And that's the 23rd of August to the 2nd of September, incidentally. Now, I'm looking at the number 8 here. Now, numerologically and mystically, I have an association of Virgo with the number 8. Now, Mercury is the ruler of Virgo, and it is exalted in Virgo. So this is very favorable. And here, the sun energizes Virgo's hard work and attention to detail. Now, this can obviously also refer to a pregnancy and birth. So there is with you now. You say, where at last there is internal and external richness, wisdom, development, carefulness, prudence. Now, particularly at times of multifaceted flowering, which I think that this is, extremes and excesses should be avoided. Internal flowering is a delicate process which occurs in stillness. It is a gift to handle lovingly and with great care. Every bloom on the tree is shielded by the leaves. Also remember that these eggs are going to hatch. It is not yet the time for counting the chickens, though. Rather, I think that this is a time when you should be cautious and take calculated risks. Now, you will be careful or should be careful with money if you can bring yourself to do that. And it's also a time, I think, where you're going to be interested in learning stuff, finding out things, educating yourself, upskilling. I think you should take good care. Physical caution is just something which I'm getting here. And you'll have a great interest in structure and detail, and that could refer to things like fashion or makeup, hairstyles. It could also be in relation to landscaping, houses. This is about not overextending yourself or underextending yourself, but really it's rather about being in the sweet spot where you can see all the bases. Now, it may not be apparent to you, particularly in light of these things which are causing you to be maybe a bit miserable from time to time. As I say, it may not be apparent to you now, but events are unfolding that are going to lead you towards your destination. You need time and patience to develop something. Don't rush it as it's a long-term thing, and be prepared to bide your time and let it come to fruition. This is an encouragement, I think, for you to keep doing what you're doing, as it eventually is going to lead to success. Now, sure, it's going to require a lot of dedication, focus, and patience, but as time passes, you will get closer to your goal. Now, that which is coming into flower in you is of exquisite beauty and delicacy. Provide for it the protection and nourishment it needs. You don't need to force anything. Everything unfolds at the proper time. Now, are you giving yourself the protection and nourishment that you now need for your development? Say this to yourself: I relax and I trust life. There, where do we go? I think it's the final card. Lots of Leo and Virgo, not surprisingly, because of the Virgo that was there, and there's a Virgo theme running through you, but lots of Leo, so this is definitely you. Virgo could also be important to you, of course, and that's the other thing, or this might be another Leo or a Virgo that you know that's coming here. Let's look at the imagery to start with, shall we? Now, the Lord of the wide and fertile land bears the winged head of a stag as his crest. Now, the stag is a symbol for strength, masculinity, and virility. Stags grow antlers in the spring, symbolic of the birth, renewal, and the return of life. The antlers fall off in the fall or autumn, which is symbolic of death, introspection, and hibernation. So the stag really reminds you of the cycles of the renewal and growth of nature. Its antlers have solar connotations as they represent the expanding rays of the sun. The Knight of Discs, esoterically, is the fiery part of Earth, and they are neutral towards each other. But there's warmth and stability and the ability to produce life in conjunction with this sun and the divine rays. Now, why am I also getting Leo and Virgo around here? Well, I think it's because this Virgo theme, the first two decans of Virgo are ruled by the Sun, your planet, and Venus, respectively. Now, the Sun is required to grow crops, isn't it? And the nurturing qualities of Venus only complement him. So I think that this is a time when you will be patient, quite a hard worker. Clever is what I'm seeing here. Seeing doctors or health around here. Work is what I'm getting on here. And there may well be this thing that you've been working on is taking time. This is almost a harvest time. The grain in the foreground is ripe. And the horse actually seems to be a little exhausted, as if after a long, hard ride. Now, how difficult is it to make the inner wealth outwardly visible and to harvest the fruits of these efforts? But the work is well worth the effort if it is done in the service of personal growth. This is a time for you to work with your instinct, I think, to bring about the best results over the longer term. I don't think that you've got to be careful of becoming something of a workaholic. I'm just getting the feeling that you won't take much interest in things outside of work. You might have a deep connection with Mother Earth. But now is the time to set your abilities to work in the service of some kind. The tasks before you are large and demand the use of all of your powers, but if you make the effort, the harvest will reward you richly. Now, are there tasks you want to avoid in your life? Whenever things to be too much trouble for you, concentrate on the positive results of your actions for you and for others. Your internal learning and growing process is the most important outcome, more important than that which you achieve by your actions. And say this to yourself, that with every task that comes my way, comes also the energy needed to complete it. Well, you had a great spread of cards there. Well done, you. That's the way it is this month. Well, what an absolutely fantastic reading for you for this month of October. I hope you enjoyed the experience as much as I enjoyed providing it to you. You know, it's great. I love doing your readings for you each month. I really do, and I love it when you come by and stop by and have a look at it. It's good. It really makes me feel great. Now, one thing to remember, of course, is this, that until I see you again, remember that you are a legend, and I look forward to seeing you again next month. And until then, it's bye for now.